Hey YouTube, coming at you today with another book review. I know these book reviews aren't that popular, or at least on my channel they're not. Perhaps it's my own doing. But I think it's critically important that people that are new to the hobby and people that are in advanced stages of this hobby recognize and make use of the wealth of information about our fish that is available to us in books. And these include books from 50 years ago and books from last week. When I went to the OCA, the Ohio Cichlid Extravaganza, I got a chance to meet Ingo Seidel. This man has been keeping L-Catfish, lure-card catfish, for 20 plus years and has been instrumental in almost every major volume that has come out about lure-card catfish. The L numbers, through photographs, through editions of his own writing, through lots of things. And I got a chance to see Ingo's Corridorus talk and his L-Catfish talk. And both of them showed me someone who not only understands these fishes, but has had the vast experience with keeping these fishes. And I think that scientific writing can be really valuable in a lot of ways, but if it doesn't have the experience of having tried to keep these fish alive in person behind it, sometimes it's not very transferable. We see the numbers, we see the science, but we don't get the experience from the scientific writing. Ingo Seidel is experienced on both sides, the science and the keeping. And the fish keeping part of his experience comes through wonderfully in this book, Back to Nature Guide of the L-Catfishes. Now, Back to Nature books, there's not very many of them, but they are jam-packed full of information. They are written by people who not only understand and know the science, but have also had vast experience in the field and at home keeping these fish. Ingo Seidel states very clearly in the forward to this book that his idea on writing this book is, quote, while the catalogs are inevitably characterized mainly by the large number of illustrations and less for the amount of text they contain, in working on the Catfish Atlas project, or along with my friends Hans George Evers, I have been instrumental in bringing 2 volumes on lure-card catfish into being. I unfortunately felt afraid that these books would only, in very rare cases, be purchased by beginners. The far-reaching scope of these books and the concomitant relatively high price might even deter anyone from buying a lure-card catfish from buying a book on these fishes at the same time. So Ingo understands that the plethora of L-Catfish books that have come out recently, and there have been any number of them, are very expensive books. And if you're going to go out and spend $50 on an L-Catfish, you might not want to turn right around and spend $150 on the book about that L-Catfish book. And for beginners, people that have a community tank, they may not want to make that investment into a book on just one fish that they've added to their tank. So Ingo in this book has tried to create a information intensive beginner's book that will allow people that are only briefly or tangentially involved with L-Catfishes, i.e. they just went out and bought one and plopped it in their tank, access to the same information that's available in the larger volumes that are much more expensive. And I think that's an incredibly valid idea, that he wants to transfer the same wealth of knowledge to people that might not be solely devoted to L-Catfish in such a way as they would be willing to spend a great deal of money on a very large volume that covers everything intensively. So this book, while being pointed at a beginner, also contains a condensed version of the knowledge that is also available in the larger volumes. And I think that's a wonderful thing for him to have done. I got him to sign my book, and he says very clearly, have fun with this small book. He understands that it's not an encyclopedic volume. And yet, he manages to cover advanced hobbyist things in a beginner's book. He has collected these fish. He has kept these fish. He's studied these fish. And I'd like to browse a little bit from what points are important for maintenance in the aquarium. And that's a critical area. As regards maintenance, first of all, L-number catfishes should be housed only in aquaria of adequate size, which is governed above all by the behavior of the species in question. While the majority of the smaller species can be kept in relatively small aquaria, when it comes to the larger L-number catfishes, there's generally a problem of size being accompanied by an element of territoriality. For this reason, these fishes require somewhat larger aquaria than have tended to be used for them in the past. The aquarium should also be decorated with plenty of stones and bogwood to provide a wealth of hiding places, so that any subordinate individuals have the opportunity to get out of sight of their persecutors. Yes, you can keep an L260 in a 10-gallon tank. No, the fish is probably not going to be very happy in a 10-gallon tank. I'm keeping 6 L260s in a 110-gallon tank. Even that might be a little small for their needs, because when you keep a fish in a small tank, the buffer zone, the ability of the water to handle rapid changes brought about by the death of a fish, us overfeeding, some water quality issue that happens, the buffer zone is so small, so minute, that any little change can affect the quality of life of your fish, because there is so little buffer between a good state and a bad state. So here again, I say over-tank your fish. Don't overstock your tank, over-tank your fish. And I think Ingo Seidel is alluding to that with his description of what size tank these fish ought to be in. He's using possible aggression to describe the need for a larger aquarium. And that's very true, because some of these fish are very aggressive towards members of their own family. Some are not. Most are very peaceable, amiable community tank residents. They pretty much go into the tank and disappear, and you only rarely catch glimpses of them. Maybe at feeding time, maybe at lights out time. So I think it's really important that his experience as a keeper of L-Catfishes comes through when talking about the size of the tank. I'd like to read a little snippet from What Are the Commonest Diseases of L-member Catfish. Because of their stout armor consisting of thick bony plates, scutes, lower-card catfishes are intrinsically very robust fish. If maintained in a manner appropriate to the species, they are as a rule, unlikely to die unless serious errors of maintenance occur. For example, incorrect water temperature or an unsuitable diet. The situation is, however, quite different in the case of freshly imported specimens. Here it is not uncommon for the fishes to already be greatly weakened and unwell. Because they have been subjected to less than optimal maintenance in the export station and during transit, long periods of hunger, constantly fluctuating water parameters, and severe stress, these fishes are often in a sorry state on arrival, and may also be infected with a variety of pathogens. If the importer is responsible in his work and subjects the freshly imported fishes to a quarantine period of at least 3 weeks at a somewhat higher than normal water temperature and, if necessary, with the addition of appropriate medication, then the aquarist should rarely, if ever, actually have to deal with the most frequent diseases of lower-card catfish. Unfortunately, however, there are rotten apples in every barrel, including the aquarium trade, and it sometimes happens that fish are sold on far too soon, and as a result, the aquarist who buys them may be in for an unpleasant surprise. I think he pretty much says it all with that statement. Be very diligent in recognizing who you buy from, what their standards are, what their fish look like, how they treat their fish. If you watch Corey's videos on how he medicates his fish that he gets in from everywhere and watches them for a month, you begin to recognize that some sellers understand the value of you being able to buy a fish with the understanding that the proper methodology and the proper medications have been applied to this fish when it was received by this seller to send on to you a product that is done well, a product that is intended to make you a repeat buyer. If you buy fish from someone and they die immediately upon you putting them in your tank, you're not real likely to buy fish from that person again. I think it's really a valuable point to understand the whole process behind importing and reselling so that you can recognize who you're getting your fish from, and what kind of shape they are in when you receive them. And I think that it's wonderful that Ingo Seidel has managed to get that across in such a tiny little volume. This is not some vast encyclopedia, but it was important enough for him to have that information in this book. It's great for a beginner. It's great for an advanced Aquarius. He also has on the back that since 1988, almost 500 new species of L-Catfish have been introduced into the hobby. I myself fell victim to one. L-260s, Queen Arabesques. The fish has smitten me. And that was just from a single purchase 8 or 9 years ago. I think it is a worthy volume to add to your collection if you are considering or have purchased an L-Catfish. Good luck, YouTube.